guess we are.
Okay, here we go. Somebody's going to win at the end of this interview. The Shake, Rattle, and Roll contest. So I know we got a few people listening.
Man, I know we got a bunch of people listening, probably watching on Facebook Live.
Yeah,
all,
we're Facebook
all
Live.
Week long.
All the names are in a hat. And Ron?
All week long. Yep, they've been doing it.
Draws.
Well, I tell you what, here's what we're going to do. First, we're going to talk, of course.
Yes, oh yeah.
Continuing our 65th Annual O'Reilly Auto Parts World Series of Drag Racing interview, we are honored today. I tell you what, man, has done it all.
Yeah.
Drove fuel cars, set records in coupe cars over the years, drove the Chi-Town Hustler, drove the Hawaiian. If I'm not mistaken, 3-0 against John Force. Yep, he is.
Yep.
Was with Austin Coyle long before,
Yeah.
and has gone on to many things. Of course, also running a very successful track-related business. But we're going to talk to him, and welcome to the WQUD studios, Ron Colson. Good to have you with us.
Well, it's good to be here, and particularly related to the World Series, because started in '57, haven't missed one since.
So that was, now was that the first race you ever went to, or the first World Series you went to?
Both.
Both. That was the first time you decided to go.
I missed the 3 years at Lawrenceville, but at '57, it was my first race ever. I met Bob Bartell, who put me to work filling chirp marks in the Sandy return road, which isn't much better yet. And met this skinny kid from Florida. And I'd come there to see Cook and Bedwell, because they were the baddest hombres in the land. And this guy beat him. And they had a guarantee, so the officials, it wasn't Bob, but some of the other officials, declared it a mistrial, and they had to run again. He beat him a second time. And I thought, who in the hell is this skinny kid from Florida? I'd never heard of Don Garlitz before. Yeah. Well, we've heard of Don Garlitz since then.
Yeah. Just a couple times. And I mean, anyone that was around the track has always heard the story about Don, where he came and he saw, first time he'd ever left Florida, came and he saw what was going on, and he went down, he pulled off the track, he left, he went up to Port Byron, told Dale Ziegler, and rented his DX station for the night and retuned his car to the way those guys were tuning, and then come back the next day and put him on the trailer, so to speak.
Yeah, Emery Cook dialed him in on that, and Bedwell never forgave him for that afterwards. That was a bone of contention. But he couldn't get enough fuel in the car. It was running 6 Stromberg 97, those old Ford cars.
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
Had the biggest jets he could get. He couldn't get enough fuel. He'd pump up pressure, do everything, couldn't get enough. And Emery said, we'll throw the jets away and tune it with the dump tubes, which was the primary supply.
Yeah.
And that's what he did overnight in that garage, and he came back the next day and just was flying.
Wow.
And made his name.
And made his name.
And all of a sudden, wow, who is this guy?
Kid from Florida.
Yeah, first time he'd been out of the state, and he came up because the World Series had the reputation. That was that and the Olympics. Those were if you came to the Midwest, you had to go. You know, you had to run the World Series at Cordova, and you had to go to up to Great Lakes and run in the Olympics. So that was also your first race. And now I've heard this story. What car did you drive in that race, your very first time?
Well, it wasn't that race. It was the next spring. And by that time, I was a senior in high school, and I had a car I should have hung on to. One of 56 Chevrolets ever built with a Corvette engine in it from the factory. And I bought it for a blistering $1,400, but I only had $700. I borrowed the other $700 from my dad, and he wouldn't let me race it till I paid him off. So my sister loaned me her 57 MGA, all of 68 horsepower.
Yeah.
And I won a jacket that said class winner Quad City Dragways on a $2 entry fee or something like that. It cost me $10,000 to win my second jacket a few years later. But I was the only one in the class, but I won. That's all that mattered. I could strut around high school with my jacket on, and I was hooked. So between Bartell and Garlitz at the first race, and then winning my first time out, even though it was probably a blistering 60 miles an hour or so, I was hooked for life. And like malaria, you just can't get it out of your system.
Yeah, oh yeah.
All up to, I mean, yeah, you drove, what, you retired in 1980, somewhere around there?
As full time.
I mean, I know you've done some burnout stuff here and there.
Well, and I came back and I drove for weddings, bar mitzvahs, and medical purposes. I drove the Hawaiian 2 different times when Mike Dunn crashed and got concussions, And I've told Mike he's never quite recovered from those concussions yet, but that's another matter.
Yeah.
And then when Frank Hawley got married, he got married in the middle of the summer. Now, what racer does that? I don't know.
No,
But I
no.
drove for him. It was at Byron Dragway. It was a match race, and the car was a dog. Couldn't figure it out. At the end of the day, Austin checked, and it was 7 degrees retarded in the timing. Ever since then, I've told Hawley he backed up the mag so I wouldn't run faster than him, but he's never confessed to it.
See, now this is what Arnie was in here yesterday, and afterwards we went outside and we were talking, and we said, because you guys tend to talk smack about each other. I would use another word, but we're on radio. And Arnie was like, you know, we need to do one of those podcast things next year for the World Series and get everybody in and just let us have at it. You know, podcast is not under FCC rule, and that would be some entertainment there.
Yeah, but some stories still go with, you know.
Yeah.
Well, don't get any rolling stories.
Well, I was gonna say
we can't
we'd
do
have some
that.
rolling stories. We'd end up with Chris Martin and Berserko Bob stories, and then
Yeah.
everything would go.
Yeah.
So, you know, like I said before, when you first got into it, you started setting coupe records. You set quite a few records early on in your career.
Well, in '61, we had it was C gas category of drag news, but it was a B gasser, as we would call it at the track. And we had the Drag News 1320 record, which was the prominent national record at that time. But that was a really rough old Studebaker. Just had a Chevy dropped in it and a Chevy pickup truck rear end and a 4-speed,
Wow.
and we were off racing. The next year, we had a very sophisticated car that Gary Wood built, torsion bar front suspension. We had the long ladder bars that nobody told us about 4 links and instant centers at that time. It's a long story how we arrived at that. It was the 7th rear suspension we had under the car. But that car has been recovered, and it's, we're calling it, well, we knew where it was all the time. We're calling it a barn find tour because it's as it has been stored over the years, decades. And I'm working with Gordy Beach in Rockford, and he's taking it around this year. Then he's got 2 years to do a restoration. Then we're going to take it as a finished running car exactly back to 1962.
Awesome.
Which, I mean, it won't meet current safety standards or anything. Although
Right.
We'll both probably sneak in and run down the track. And we're going to call that the Road to Ocala, and then it's going to the Garless Museum. And Don's been after me to get that car restored and in the museum for years because he didn't want them in any of my top fuel cars. He said, I got a lot of top
Yeah,
fuel
he's
cars.
got his own car, so.
Well, and a lot of others too.
Yeah, yeah.
But he wanted something more from the earlier days and
Yeah.
a gas coupe representation. And that car was very prominent because it was, as far as we know, the first sportsman car ever featured in national advertising. And Pennzoil ran a full-page ad in Hot Rod magazine 3 different months in '63, and that was just unheard of at that time. And I didn't even know they were going to do it. I was in military service at Fort Leonard Wood at the time, and went to the newsstand to get my Hot Rod magazine, and opened up, and there's a full-page ad on
Of your
our
car.
It knocked me right over. I about had to get up.
Oh
off
yeah,
the
but then you
floor.
get to take it around. Well,
mine.
that's mine, boys. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well,
Doesn't somebody owe me some money here?
Yeah. Well, there was another first with that car, and we had a Craftsman tool deal. And actually, the manager of the hardware department in the Rockford Sears store had been in high school at the same time I was. He's a year or two older, and he promised us one night at a bar after making too much adult beverage a full box of Craftsman tools if we put Craftsman in the car. And then I showed up at the store and said, you know, where's the toolbox? And so he had to run in Chicago to get an okay on it. He covered himself with some story. But it was the first ever Sears Roebuck involvement in motorsports. So after we got back from our Army time, I went to Sears and I thought, boy, I got my foot in the door with this big company, and
Yeah.
we've got them in Hot Rod magazine along with the Pennzoil ad, and they're going to roll out the red carpet for me, and we're off and running. And they said, we don't even have a battery to give you. I said, well, not a battery. I said, I was, thinking about a money deal. Well, we made a deal with a guy for Die Hard batteries, and he took everything we got. And I thought, it was kind of like I said about who's Don Garless and
Yeah.
who's Cook and Battle. I thought, who's Roger Penske? What's he doing stealing my sponsor? I've yet to tell Roger he got his start by stealing my sponsor. and he did pretty well with it.
Yeah, he kind of built something up
Yeah,
there.
a little thing, yeah.
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 I think I recognize that name. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you went from class racing. What took you to fuel cars?
Well, while we were in the military, and I was, of course, good friends with Garlis from 57 forward and up to today, he was building a chassis for Top Gas car. We wanted to go to that professional category. And Top Gas at that time was very significant. And in fact, Top Gas car a lot of times would win the big races because by the end of the meet, when the Top Gas had run top fuel, the fueler had his tongue hanging out real bad, if not completely legs up. And the Top Gas car could win and win the primary money. So
Now, just how many rounds were you talking about back then? How many rounds did you have to go?
usually 3 or 4
Three or
within
four.
class, and then another one for overall. So
Yeah.
it was a lot of laps on the cars, and the fuelers run those old 392 blocks that split the cylinder walls with amazing regularity. And
Yeah.
you know, we didn't have any Donovan blocks or Teeth Black engines, anything like that at that time. You just go to the boneyard. In fact, some of the guys would just go to the boneyard and get a stock short block and just rinse out the black tar that used to be oil, put some decent oil in it, and race it till it fell apart.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, the cost was reasonable anyway.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, as fuel cars will do, they could catch fire. Not as bad as what we see today, maybe. But the guys were driving them in T-shirts.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Picture a top fuel drag shirt, the guy driving in a T-shirt, but just, I guess they said they didn't know any better. By the time I got in the Top Gas car, we had fire suits, but the first one was aluminized asbestos, which is kind of like wrapping a potato, you know, and putting it in the oven.
Yeah, yeah.
And the other thing is the
You wouldn't get burned. You just.
well, the aluminizing would wear off of them. That was one of the problems. And then the pants part of the suit would tend to split in the middle. We won't go there. But you didn't want to have a bad fire in
Yeah.
the suit.
Yeah, yeah. And if that didn't get you, then the mesothelioma, the commercials now for the asbestos. Yeah.
But we had 2 years with the Garlis car, and then Gary Wood built a chassis. We started to build our own chassis by then, which was pretty unique. It was it had 4-link rear suspension, parallel 4-link, and Gary was always an engineering type guy. A coilover shock that he designed himself, very lightweight, and he got a patent on it. In fact, lightweight, the car with a cast iron engine weighed 950 pounds, wet and ready to run.
Wow.
Except for the roll cage and around the rear engine mount, the biggest tube in the car was 1 1/8" chromoly tubing with 35 thousandths wall.
Wow.
So it's kind of like the Christmas.
You could
present
almost
wrapping.
kick it and bend it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say because the block's got to weigh 6. You know.
Well, a little lighter than that, but it's
Yeah.
right in that range. And then we did bend it in the wheel stand in Australia, and I had to just put a brace on it and then bring it back for Gary to fix it. Which that was another interesting time because that's where I met the Bushmaster. We won't go to Bushmaster stories, but
we've heard the Bushmaster story.
but I was in the first U.S. drag team to Australia in 1966. That was a great time, and that car we ran it 2 years, and then the freight train was really dominating Top Gas, and we thought, well, we'll build a car with 2 big. By then, I put a big block Chevy in the second year in the Gary Wood chassis, and we built a twin engine car, or a chassis for a twin engine car. And then when I got around to the cost of building 2 complete engines for it, plus spares and everything, we thought, well, 2 engines ain't the way to go. Let's go real light. So we built a real light car. By then, the money was getting low anyway, and I'd already built 2 new cars, and so I got an offer to drive Ken Peterson, and Peterson had been involved with us in the Top Gas car. He had a Top Fuel car, and I got an offer to drive for him, so I became a hired driver. Only problem with that is on the 8th run in the car, we were up at Pequannon, Wisconsin, which that track suffered from the Wisconsin winters. It was like driving down a washboard. And the car was carrying the front end, and I was racing Dwayne Nichols, and I knew he wouldn't lift. I could hear him in the other lane, and it was just kind of drifting to the right. And I thought, well, I did some mental calculations, and I still had maybe 6 inches of pavement left when it was going to settle down. So I just stayed with it. What I didn't take into account is there's a big berm along there, and there was a crosswind that day, and when it came down, it moved over that 6 inches and another 6 into the dirt, drew it right off the track, and all of a sudden I'm going like 212 miles an hour down a drainage channel. Which wasn't so bad, except there's a bridge down there, but the bridge doesn't go out to the drainage channel. So I caught the front of that and somersaulted into the creek, and car was a lot worse for wear.
to say the least, yeah.
Yeah. But we built another new car, and the following year we won the UDRA championship
Yeah.
for UDRA, and that kind of got a toehold on things. And then Ken ran out of money. These race cars have a certain pattern here, what they do to the ownership.
And I think it's called a rabbit hole where your
Yeah.
money all goes in.
And we did get a shot in '70. The fellow that had the American Bandstand Top Fuel deal ran out of money. There's a pattern here.
Yeah, definitely.
But he was obligated to run the U.S. Nationals at Indy, and so he said, if you guys will get me out of the obligation, or not get me out, but cover the obligation to Indy, I'll turn the deal over to you, and it could be yours for next year. So that sounded pretty good, and by then Ken hadn't had to buy nitro for a while, so he had enough money that we repainted the car for American Bandstand, went to Indy, and didn't make any big impact, but we were present. So, okay, now we got a toe in the door with American Bandstand. Does this sound like Craftsman Tools? Maybe?
Yeah.
Well, the next year, ABC didn't renew the American Bandstand contract until June of the following year. Usually they'd done it in the fall. So we had no
money, yeah. No
nothing
money.
to sell, and so I was in temporary retirement, and then Hoover
Do you
Wheel
get-
Alignment, which was
Do you get paid unemployment?
no, I never applied, but I don't think it would have.
I don't think it would have.
But Hoover Wheel Alignment from which was a family business and a family racing team from Minneapolis. Tom Hoover decided to quit driving the Top Fuel car and go to a funny car, and his dad didn't want to do it. So his dad kept the Top Fuel car, and I got a job driving for them. Wonderful people, absolutely wonderful.
So I remember Tom from the Showtime car. I mean,
Oh, Tom was great.
It was good to
and
hear, yeah.
His mom and dad, his mom was bad influence. She'd bake for all the racers. We'd all have a waistline like you if I would have stayed with them.
Oh, man, what? It only took 20 minutes for him to rack on me. All right.
We have a winner.
No, I don't have any room to talk.
That's
in that
not
department.
bad. It only took him 20 minutes to make a hit. Okay,
But-
that's all right.
But Pa Hoover was just a
I
great guy to drive
got
for.
stories too, you know.
And interesting thing, we found out now in scientific tests that at 93% is where the nitro spikes at auto ignition. Pa used to run 94%. He had a personal relationship with the nitro barrel. Sometimes it just would treat him right. And so I drove their last Woody Gilmore car, and that was my last rear engine or front engine dragster. And that car was so cool because the way George tuned it, maybe it's because it was so rich because he's run so much percentage. It'd have 4-foot flames idling, and then they get long when you race.
Oh, man.
And you'd launch the car, and of course, going down the track, you got all speckled with rubber dots all over your goggles, and like what happened with them. But what was really interesting, besides the tunnel of fire you're sitting in, is that's before we had interliners. So the tires would grow from centrifugal force, and they'd pull away from the rim. So as they grow and get tall, it got to where if you were bold enough, I was never this bold, I could have reached out with my hand and put my fist between the rim and the tire at speed.
Oh, yeah.
And it was just way cool. And then over the winter, they had Woody build him a back motor car, and I drove that the first half of 70, well, let's see, it was 71, I drove most of the year, and then going into 72, drove until early summer. And I got an offer from the Chi-Town Hustler guys. Claire Sanders had been driving for him, and he left to go with the Ram Chargers. And I think he was a little frustrated because they were making the transition from a torque flight and suspended car to a solid mount rear end, which they just replaced the shocks with steel bars and put a power glide in it. And they were really stumbling, which was unusual for them because they had been so dominant for several years. And anyway, they offered me a driving job, and Pa Hoover said, well, the percentage was less, but the number of events was
More.
10 times as much. And he had somebody that could take the spot, and he said, "Gee, go for it." So with his full blessing, I went over to Chi-Town Hustler, and very shortly after that, we got it running really strong, and that was the car that if you've seen the picture of either the Chicago skyline in the background or the one to the Buckingham Fountain.
Yep, where you're doing burnouts
We-
on the sidewalks.
Yeah, that was unique right there. And just to touch on that quickly, we had just come back from North Carolina. We had the car running good. It was still in summer, and because that winter we were real dominant on the West Coast match race season. But we came back into town, and SK Tools had a promotion set up, and we were to do a burnout on Columbus Drive, which is the roadway that runs right in front of Grant Park and Buckingham Fountain.
Yeah, the fountain for Married with Children.
Yeah, that was the opening
Yeah,
of
yeah,
every
yeah.
one of those TV shows.
Yeah.
And so we came back in town. We knew we were supposed to do this, and we went down and we looked at things. Well, Columbus Drive looked like North Atlantic during a storm. I mean, it was so wavy from trucks driving on the asphalt, and then hot summer days. It was soft, and it was bulged up. We couldn't have pulled the car across there in the nylon toe strap without ripping the pan off. So there's this whole security contingent of Chicago cops. There's probably several dozen of them there, along with TV stations and newspaper photographers. And you got to do something with all those people there.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So I went over to the head cop and I said, "No way can we even go out on that roadway." But I said the sidewalk's pretty smooth. The sidewalk's about 12 feet wide and had parking meters on the street side and landscaping on the other side, and then of course a big opening of 100 yards or so in front of the fountain. And he looked at me like I was crazy. he was convinced I was crazy.
Yeah.
And I said, well, just for instance, we just ran Don Schumacher down North Carolina, and the track was only 26 feet wide, and it narrowed down to one lane at the finish. And I said, we got through that alive. So he kind of shook his head, but said, go for it. So we took the car up one side of the fountain opening quite a ways. And of course, the sidewalk, like most sidewalks, is concrete. And we'd never been in concrete before.
Yeah.
Didn't think anything of it. We probably would have thought the same with grass. And no, not that kind of grass.
That's
He
two.
looked, he
all
looked,
right?
he looked at you.
I'm
looked
keeping
right at
tally
you.
marks over here. Okay, I'm going to tell a story about Indy one night if this keeps on.
No.
Or
Okay, I'll quit.
all right.
Truth.
Anyway.
Yeah.
Coyle lays down some strips of water out of the big water bottle we had to get the tires turning
Yeah.
and not eat up the clutch, which is typical for burnouts. And I started, one of the secrets of the burnouts with Chi-Town, this entered into another thing with Jungle Jim later, but that's a whole other story. But we had 5 inches of throttle travel instead of typical 1 inch of on-off,
Yeah.
nothing. And you could feather the throttle so you get the tires turning and not standing up, just burning the center, but the whole width of the tire making smoke. So I was already attuned to careful throttle control. So I start out with the careful throttle control and just a little bit of pedal, and all of a sudden it starts lugging down. So I got to give it some more throttle, and then some more, and some more. By the time I was going across the opening, I was flat on the wood, and this thing was charging. And I had figured, just mental calculation, I'd be going maybe 60 miles an hour when I had to dive between the parking meters and the landscape on the other side. I was probably more like 130. And I was real tempted to use the parachutes, except they boom out the side, and when they blossom, which would mean one would be ripping up the landscape and the other would be collecting parking meters.
Yeah.
And I thought that cop that thought I was crazy would just think I needed to go to jail instead.
Yeah.
And so I had to stop on the brake. So about a city block down the road there at the Chicago lakefront, I got the thing stopped, but all in one piece.
Yeah.
And I made the comment that my obligation was to bring the car and driver back in one piece to Coyle. And I mentioned the car first.
Yeah.
Because if it wasn't the car first, there wouldn't be.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, that just
And
goes
of
to
course,
reason.
he's talking about Austin Coyle, who, I guess was with John Force for so many years. But even back then, did he have a toothpick in his mouth all the time?
Either that or a cigarello.
Okay.
Cigarella.
Yeah. You know those little skinny ones
Oh,
with
yeah,
the
oh, yeah.
plastic tip on them?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, he'd bubble.
But they're kind of like what he smokes. Yeah.
Yeah. No plastic tips.
Oh. Okay. All right.
No, you said we weren't gonna go there.
Yeah, but now it's the both of you.
I went there.
Man, what you did-
I figured it's open game.
Yeah.
No, it's no fair double teaming him.
Yeah.
So,
He can hold his own one-on-one.
Oh,
We
yeah.
double team and we'll whip him.
yeah, okay, yeah, go ahead. Then I get to tell the story about the flooded room with you and Dickie. Okay, how many stories?
Uh-oh.
How many stories do you want me to bring up?
Never mind.
Okay, see.
Yeah.
So you drove for Chi-Town for how many years?
3 years.
And then you switched over to the Hawaiian.
Well, there was an interval in between in the Chicago Patrol, but that wasn't a full season. That was, well, I've always referred to it as being on fire more than it was out. So we'll kind of let it go at that. That did have, and I don't think we have to have your delay button for this, but there is a slightly off-color aspect to this. We had a parachute failure at Martin, Michigan. I went off the end about 200 miles an hour in a sand trap, and stopped okay, except that the car folded 90 degrees upward in front of the engine. So the front wheels were up in the air, the body's blown off, and I had a seriously stretched neck because we didn't have any Haas devices then, and no upholstery. We just sat in the aluminum seat. The seat slammed me hard enough that I got a broken tailbone. But
Oh yeah.
long way from broken neck or broken back, but on the painful side. So we missed a weekend rebuilding the car, and after that we went to Great Lakes in Union Grove, Wisconsin, and I was racing Tom McEwen, great Tom
Not
McEwen.
late,
We lost
great,
him
the
lately.
mongoose, yeah, they were just recently.
Great guy. I
Yeah.
can tell you goodwill stories about him all day long. But I was glad to have him in the other lane the way it turned out, because you want to be able to trust the guy in the other lane. Because I had the worst fire I'd ever had. And it burned the parachutes off, which would have made stopping difficult, except it burned the sidewall out of the tires so they went flat, so that got me stopped. Burned all the paint off the car. Took a couple layers off my fire suit, and got out, kind of looked over the damage, and we went back to trailer. And I told the guys, I said, well, you know, get a spare engine out and get in there. I got another fire suit, and we'll make the next round. But turned out that the fire traveled up the vent tube and exploded, or not exploded, but split the seams on the fuel tank, which is why it fed it so much nitro. But the slightly off-color aspect was that because of the broken tailbone, I had gotten one of those rubber donuts that people sit on when they got hemorrhoids and they got to travel. And it happened to be approximately the color of the table here. And when I got out of the car, I didn't realize it, but the aluminum seat was just like a frying pan with all the fire going on there, and it melted it at a critical spot on the back of my suit. So, while I wasn't really disturbed, I know everybody saw me in the pits thought, boy, that guy really had an accident.
That's good. That's a good story there.
But anyway, I separated with that team a little bit later. They had about 8 or 10 different drivers in 2 seasons for that car. But anyway, that was a whole separate story. But then the next year, I got a call from Roland Leong. It was close to, not quite this late in the summer of '76. And Larry Arnold had been driving the car, but Larry was going through divorce and had to fly back to LA. And Roland said, could you come down and drive a match race at Cordova, back to the old home track? I said, yeah, I'd be glad to. So I grabbed a fire suit and helmet, went down on Saturday, and pulled in. And that was just after Roland had his whole rig stolen the winter before. And he was still rebuilding, so he had a 28-foot 2-axle trailer, which seems pretty small compared to the
everything
we see today.
Yeah.
And there's 2 girls cleaning off the aluminum panels inside the car. They had the aluminum popped off of it. So I said, Roland, I said, when's the crew get here? He says, they're working. So here's Roland. He's got a short trailer, 2-axle trailer, with a short block, 2 individual cylinder heads, and a spare blower. And that's his whole inventory.
Wow.
And
you're running the World Series.
no, this
Oh,
wasn't the
this
World
is match
Series.
race.
This
This
is
is
a
a match
match
race,
race.
yeah.
It was
Just-
late July, something
Yeah.
like that. And then the next week, Larry Arnold couldn't come back, so he said, could you fill in again? And then, well, could you stay till the U.S. Nationals? And then, well, could you stay till the World Finals? And then it was, how about if we work together in a schedule, maybe you can drive next year. So, you know, by then I'd already lasted longer than any of Roland's drivers at that time. He was going through 2 drivers a year. And anyway, then one year led to another, and we had well, the car that I drove at first, that I finished the season, was South Chicago Auto Parts sponsorship. But apparently the sponsor was recycling cars without the permission of the previous owner. And
Okay.
a car pulled up alongside a business competitor, I guess, and shot him,
Oh.
dead.
So you lost your sponsor.
Lost the sponsor.
Yeah.
That's
And
one way to lose a sponsor.
Roland picked up Power Gloss, a car polish the next year, and Torco oil, and we put a new Monza body on it. It was a Butera chassis. It was, I think, the 8th year on that car, but it was still a wonderful car. And we did real well that year, and then by then I was the vice president of Avani Communications, and we were able to put, and they were car people, particularly the president of the company. He was a collector of Ferraris and things like that. Obviously, he had more money than the rest of us.
Yeah.
His mom was Ray Kroc's secretary when McDonald's was started, and she sold the original franchises. So her stock for being secretary turned into $200 million.
Just a Kevin Bacon one thing. When I was living in California in the 80s, working construction, after Ray died, I helped build her, Mrs. Kroc, Joanne Kroc. I helped build her new home.
Really?
Yeah, I was one of the construction people that worked on her house.
And I thought the only linkage we had was Cordova.
No.
We got.
It's also hamburgers, baby.
This is family.
And Ray Kroc is one of my favorite quotes. If you see your competitor drowning, stick a hose down his throat.
Yeah.
That's always been one of my, okay.
Okay.
That's why 30 billion served.
Yeah.
So then you drove for Roland, and we can't tell too many Roland stories because we can't on the radio.
No.
Roland has one of the most, and with that accent of his, it is one of the most colorful ever. He's something else, man. When you're talking.
But his vocabulary is not
Yeah.
FCC approved.
Yeah, not in the least. So let's talk a little bit about the World Series. I mean, you've ran it for many years. You've been involved, like you said. You went to your first one in 57,
57.
and you haven't missed one.
Right.
And then, and also this year, pretty important. You're part of the initial, the first class that is going into the Hall of Fame. But you're a member of a couple other Hall of Fames already, aren't you?
Well, yeah. Great Lakes in 2008, and the East Coast Drag Times in North Carolina Hall of Fame in 2015. But
This is one that probably means a lot to you, though.
this is home.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And you're going, of course, in with Bob Bartell, the class. I mean, Bob Bartell, how can you not
No.
put him in first? You got to. Bob Bartell, of course, Big Daddy, Shirley, Arnie, yourself, the late, great Diamond Jim, and
Richard Hutchins.
And, Richard Hutchins, the wheel standing unbelievable, and Ron Leake. A lot here in the Midwest. So it's quite the auspicious class going in for the first year.
Well, there's a definite honor, A, just in going in, B, in being in the first group, and C, the group that I'm in is so incredible, and particularly, I've got a linkage with everybody in there, but as I said, from that first World Series, Bob Bartell and Don Garlitz, those have been lifelong friendships, and it means a lot.
Well, I think it means a lot to us. Oh, all right, somebody just sent a message to me. Please stop jingling my keys in my pocket because someone hears it. Okay.
Okay.
I'm standing. What can I say? That's how it is.
Yeah. Well, they just want to make sure the keys are all your jangling.
Yeah. Man, there's 2, 4. Holy cow! There we go. Yeah, beat up on Ted. I got a few stories about you too, old man.
I know.
So this weekend you're going to be there all weekend long and just kind of hanging out and bench racing, or you're just going to be there on Saturday? I mean, what are your plans for?
I've got to check with Dominic, the track manager, to see if specifically there's something that they need on Friday. Absolutely Saturday, and I would anticipate Friday also.
Okay.
Yeah, it's supposed to storm.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Boy,
Say not so.
No, just on Friday.
Yeah, Friday.
Saturday and Sundays
looking
good.
wonderful.
Yeah.
For Friday, I mean, I looked and you know, I mean, for a lot of years, I'm looking 3 weeks out.
Yeah, oh yeah.
You know,
I haven't even looked at our car show date yet.
I
don't even
said-
do that.
I stopped by yesterday to go over a couple things because we're going to be doing a live remote there Saturday. Go a couple things at the track, and as I was getting ready to leave, I just looked around, thought to myself, actually I said it out loud, man, I'm glad I'm not having to do this no more. And
Yeah.
it's just, oh, I can just remember all the years, and you were involved, you know, all the years that we were there. It was just, boy,
Oh yeah.
World Series week is, oh.
The one thing that saves you over there is a lot of times the storms come from the west, they hit the river, and
And they break up.
They
And
break
we've
up,
had that,
you know.
we've
Oh,
had
yeah,
that a lot. We've
you know.
had that a lot over the years.
Yeah.
Well, we really appreciate, but now we got one thing. Of course, all week long we've been, all 2 weeks, last 2 weeks we've been giving away all kinds of tickets. Everybody won tickets to Saturday, and then our big drawing is for what we call a shake, rattle, and roll. And we kind of figured if one of us drew it, then it'd be,
Yeah.
So what we've done is we're going
You
to
got 'em
ask.
all. You can see there.
Yep, we've got all the names
All
right
the
there. We're
tickets.
live.
All the tickets.
And I'm sure everyone's listening, and we're going to ask Ron Colson if he would draw one name out of our hat. Get your hand out of there.
I'm
mister.
just stirring them up.
Okay, yeah.
You know how does
There's
it-
only 10. You ain't got to stir that
Yeah,
much.
you know, the winner's always on the bottom.
You're
you
pulling
know.
out all the ones you don't like. So here we go live, a
Listen,
drum roll.
I gotta look the other
Oh,
way.
you can look however you want,
Yeah.
man. It doesn't matter to us, okay? And hand it to me, and we'll see. Okay, winner is size number 8. Oh, no.
That's the label.
Winner is made in the USA, washing cold water. Nope. Our winner is going to be Tom.
Tom from Tampico.
Tom from Tampico, right there. You see it.
Yeah.
And I tell you what, he was one that when he won the Saturday tickets, I could hear him dancing in the streets for
Yes.
years.
So Tom,
So Tom from Tampico will be getting a hold of you, and you'll be able to come in and pick up your certificate. I forgot. I got it at home. I will bring it in tomorrow morning. If you want to come in sometime after tomorrow and you got a certificate that we will present, all you got to do is take it and you're in.
you're
So
in.
we will
Okay.
make sure. I might drop it off a little later today. I'll drop it off.
So Tom, there you go.
So there you go, Tom. I know Katie's watching. She's applauding over there.
Yes.
Well, Mr. Colson, I tell you what, we truly thank you. I'll probably see you tomorrow. I know they got a press conference tomorrow afternoon. I think at 1 or so. I'll probably see you over there. But it was good to
Yeah.
see you again.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't think we haven't seen each other probably since Bartel's funeral.
Right.
I think a bunch of us went out to eat afterwards. I think that was the last time we actually saw, because we used to see each other quite a bit.
Yeah.
Especially around this time of year.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially this time of year.
This time of year we saw each other a whole lot.
Yeah.
But thank you for coming in. Congratulations, of course, on being inducted into the Hall of Fame. It just seems right, you know.
Yeah.
I thought he was gonna
that
say
we're the first
indicted,
ones.
he did say inducted.
Inducted. No. We're not going to talk about indictments because Ron's the one that taught me. You get a speeding ticket, you go in and you ask for a jury trial. Because then they'll usually kick it because they don't want the trouble of a jury trial over a ticket. He's the one that taught me
Yeah.
that.
Ah,
And he's done that, in probably courthouses throughout the United States.
maybe.
North America.
Okay, just
Not so much in Australia, but I was only there 2 months.
yeah, there you go.
Just North America.
Just North America. Yeah, he's on. Here's how you beat a traffic ticket.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter how fast you're going.
Yeah.
Tell him you want a jury trial.
Well, you know the interesting story about that, this is another gentleman that sometimes exceeded the velocity limits. He was testing a new Ferrari, and he got out on the road and felt pretty good, and he put the hammer down, and he was really flying, and all of a sudden this state cop in his back bumper, and so he pulled over, and the cop said, you know, you were going 140 in a 70 zone. He said, but I'm just about off shift. If you've got a story I never heard before, I might let you go. And the guy looked at him and he said, 2 years ago my wife ran away with a state cop and I thought you were bringing her back.
Good one.
Okay, so it's just like the late great Jack Thompson. He's gonna come in, he's gonna tell a joke, and he's
Yeah. See, I really think we need to get all these guys together, set up microphones and a conference table and some cameras, and just turn them loose.
and just turn them. Yeah, we get it. But see, then we'd have to make sure that we got them to come in. I mean, there'd have to be a certain group
Yeah.
that would be willing to tell stories, you know.
And somebody to throw chum on the table so they all bite, you know. Yeah.
Yeah, because there was a couple times yesterday during the interview when Arnie was, I can't talk about that. I can't talk about that.
Yeah,
Sure
yeah.
you can. No, I can't.
Yeah.
But again, we really appreciate you coming in. Again, congratulations, you know, on being into the Hall of Fame, and I'm sure everybody, like they usually do, you'll have a lot of fans stopping by trying to talk to you
Oh, yeah,
during
yeah.
the. I know whenever we did trade shows together, there was always people coming by. If he was standing there, they didn't care what we had to say. Oh wait,
Yeah.
Ron's there.
Yeah.
So they wanted to talk to him, you know.
Yeah.
So thanks so much. We really appreciate it.
All right.
And we got our winner, and man, what a great great
Great promo.
promo this has been. So
Yeah.
Tom, I know Tom's excited. He'll be beating on the door.
Oh yeah. Okay.
All right, thanks again. We appreciate it.
Well, good to be
Have
here.
a good day.
All right.